A United Nations Guide. Chapter 1. A United Nations Guide. The United Nations Info 1. The United Nations is a huge organization made up of many independent departments. library.yale.edu/UN. mfat.government.nz, go to United Nations Handbook. un.org/aroundworld/unix, information about the UN around the world. un.org/partners/civil society/ngo/ngo-ngls, NGLS Handbook, profiles of UN agencies. unsystem.org, official web locator for the United Nations system of organizations. unicwash.org, United Nations Information Center. un.org. un.org/aroundtheworld/unix, information centers. un.org/departments. un.org/pubs/sales, books. un.org/aroundworld/unix, information. unv.org, volunteers. unici.org, United Nations Association in Canada. unausa.org, an association United States. library.yale.edu/un/unhome.htm. unbiasednet.un.org, citations for UN resolutions and other documents. unsystem.org, United Nation organizations. unfoundation.org. 123world.com/uno/index.html, United Nations, links to programs and agencies. okcu.edu/law/ib/pdfs/guide_un.pdf, United Nations Guide. un.org/English. unog.ch, United Nations Office at Geneva. unodc.org/crime_CICP_sitemap.html, United Nations Office for Drug Control and Crime Prevention. un.org/English. unsystem.org, official website locator for the United Nations system of organizations. un.org/site_index, site index. un.org/documents, UN Documentation Center. un.org/abouton/chart.html, organization chart of the United Nations system. un.org/departments/dhl, Dag Hammarskjöld Library. un.org/departments/index.html, departments of the UN Secretariat. un.org/departments/other prgs.htm, other offices, programs, and regional commissions. un.org/partners/civil_society/agenda.htm, global issues on the UN agenda. un.org/pubs/onlinepubs.htm, online publications. undp.org/missions, permanent missions to the United Nations, New York. un.org/overview/brief.html, number sign agencies, the specialized agencies. un.org/departments/cartographic/english/htmain.htm, United Nations Cartographic Section. un.org/cyberschoolbus/index.asp, United Nations Cyberschoolbus resource source. un.org/news, United Nations News Center. un.org/news/press, United Nations Press Releases. unog.ch, United Nations Office at Geneva. un.or.at, United Nations Office at Vienna. un.org/ESA, United Nations websites organized by area of interest, economic and social development. un.org/ESA/subindex, subject index to economic and social development. United Nations Info 2. un.org/GA, General Assembly. un.org/docs/SC, Security Council. un.org/ESA/coordination/ECOSOC, Economic and Social Council. 212.153.43.18/ISTWA/ISTJA2.htm, International Court of Justice. un.org/documents/st.htm, Secretariat. UN Programs. unctad.org, GUNCTAD, UN Conference on Trade and Development. ITC.org, ITC, International Trade Center. UNDCP.org, UNDP, UN Drug Control Program. UNEP.org, UNEP, UN Environment Program. UNICEF.org, UNICEF, UN Children's Fund. UNDP.org, UNDP, UN Development Program. UNIFEM.org, UNIFEM, UN Development Fund for Women. UNCDF.org, UNCDF, UN Capital Development Fund. UNFPA.org, UNFPA, UN Population Fund. UNHCR.org, UNHCR, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. UNHCHR.org, UNHCR, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. WFP.org, WFP, World Food Programme. Unchangeds.org, UNHABITAT, UN Settlements Programme. UN Regional Commissions. ECA.org, ECA, Economic Commission for Africa. ECE.org, ECE, Economic Commission for Europe. ECLAC.org, ECLAC, Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. ESCAP.org, ESCAP, Economic Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. ESCWA.org, ESCWA, Economic Social Commission for Western Asia. Specialized Agencies/Entities. ILO.org, ILO, International Labour Organization. FAO.org, FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization. IFAD.org, IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development. UNOWDS.org, UNAIDS, Joint UN Programme on HIV/AIDS. UNDESA.org, UNDESA, UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. UNESCO.org, UNESCO, UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. UNIDO.org, UNIDO, UN Industrial Development Organization. UNODC.org, UNODC, UN Office on Drugs and Crime. WHO.IN/WHO, World Health Organization. WorldBank.org, World Bank, World Bank Group. WORLD-TOURISM.org, WTO, World Tourism Organization. WTO.org, WTO, World Trade Organization. UNOG.org, UNOG, UN Office at Geneva. UNON.org, UNON, UN Office at Nairobi. UNOV.org, UNOV, UN Office at Vienna. More UN websites. UN.org/en/documents/journal.asp, UN Journal. UN.org/press/n, meetings coverage. UN.org/en/media/accreditation/daily list.html, daily list of documents. UN.org/en/media/accreditation, media alert. webtv.un.org, webcast. UN.org/en/ga, General Assembly.un.org/pga, GA President. UN.org/en/sc, Security Council.un.org/en/sc/presidency, SC President. UN.org/en/ecosoc, Economic and Social Council.un.org/en/ecosoc/president, ecosoc President. ICJ-CIJ.org/homepage/index.php ? lang =n, International Court of Justice. UN.org/en/ma-inbodies/secretariat/index.shtml, secretariat.un.org/sg, Secretary General. UNOG.ch, Geneva. UNON.org, Nairobi. UNVienna.org, Vienna. UNSCEB.org/directory, UN System Directory. Emergency.un.org, Emergency Information. OIOS.un.org/page ?slug =reporting-wrongdoing, reporting wrongdoing. UN.org/en/documents/journal.asp, UN Journal. un.org/departments/dhl, library. shop.un.org, publications. un-ilibrary.org, UNI library. unyearbook.un.org, UN yearbook. unp.un.org/bookshop, bookshop. un.org/department/cartographic/english/htmain.htm, maps. un.org/en/media/accreditation, media accreditation. See sonet.org/index.php menu =34, NGO accreditation at ECOSOC. outreach.un.org/NGO relations/membership/application, NGO accreditation at DPI. visit.un.org, visitors services. un.org/department/pt/welcome-united-nations-procurement-division-UNPD, procurement. careers.un.org/lbw/home.aspx, employment. careers.un.org/lbw/home.aspx ?view type =IP, internships. outreach.un.org/mun, model archives.un.org, UN archives. unmultimedia.org/AV library, UN audio-visual library. un.org/universal-declaration-human-rights/index.html, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. unicef.org/CRC, Convention on the Rights of the Child. icj-cij.org/documents/index.php ?p1 4 p2 2 p3 0, Statute of the International Court of Justice. un.org/news, news center. un.org/press/n, press releases. un.org/press/en/content/noon-briefings, briefings. un.org/sg/spokesperson, spokesperson. unmultimedia.org/radio/english, radio. unmultimedia.org/audio_by_phone.html, audio by phone. unmultimedia.org/photo, photos. unmultimedia.org/tv/unefed, unefed. webtv.un.org, webcast. blogs.un.org/unstories, unstories. unmultimedia.org/tv/unia, UN in action. unmultimedia.org/tv/21st century, 21st century. unmultimedia.org/tv/blog, diaries from the field. un.org/en/global issues/democracy/index.shtml, democracy. un.org/en/decolonization, decolonization. un.org/rule of law, rule of law. un.org/en/prevent genocide/advisor, prevention of genocide and the responsibility to protect. un.org/en/Holocaust remembrance, the Holocaust. unispal.un.org/dpa/dpr/unispal.nsf/udc.htm, the question of Palestine. un.org/en/prevent genocide/Rwanda, the Rwanda genocide. un.org/en/counter-terrorism, action to counter terrorism. un.org/victimsoftterorism/n, victims of terrorism. Children and armed conflict.un.org, children and armed conflict. un.org/en/women/end violence, unite to end violence against women. outreach.un.org/mop, messengers of peace. un.org/millennium goals, millennium development goals. un.org/sustainable development, sustainable development. un.org/climate change, climate change. un.org/en/zero hunger, zero hunger challenge. un.org/en/global issues, global issues. worldhumanitariansummit.org, World Humanitarian Summit. refugeesmigrants.un.org, new, refugees and migrants. Facebook.com/United Nations, Facebook. Twitter.com/UN, Twitter. YouTube.com/United Nations, YouTube. Pinterest.com/United Nations, Pinterest. Plus.google.com/u/0 Google+. Flickr.com/photos/un_photo, Flickr. united-nations.tumblr.com, Tumblr. Instagram.com/United Nations, Instagram. United Nations job websites. jobs.un.org/elearn/production/home.html, United Nations Office of Human Resources. unjobs.org. jobs.un.org, United Nations. okchar.org/en/about-us/pages/work-study-opportunities.aspx, Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights Work and Study Opportunities. unicef.org/about/employ, United Nations Children's Fund Employment at UNICEF. unctad.org/en/pages/about unctad/unctad-employment.aspx, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD vacancy announcements. jobs.undp.org, United Nations Development Programme, UNDP Jobs. who.in/employment/n, World Health Organization WHO Employment Site. United Nations Development Programme. 1 UN. Plaza. NYC 10017. 212-906-5597. UNDP.org. Permanent jobs worldwide and summer jobs for students. publicadministration.un.org/en/about-us/who-we-are/employment-opportunities. un.org/en/index.html, welcome to the United Nations. un.org/development/dea/n, Department of Economic and Social Affairs. unpan.org, UNPAN. publicadministration.un.org. intgoforum.org, Internet Governance Forum. publicadministration.un.org/en/PAF for Sustainable Development, Public Administration for Sustainable Development. publicadministration.un.org/en/development Development Management. publicadministration.un.org/en/ICT4D, ICT for Development. publicadministration.un.org/en/institution building, institution building. intgovforum.org. workspace.unpn.org. careers.un.org/lbw/home.aspx, United Nations Secretariat. un.org/departments/orem/indexpo.htm, United Nations Agencies. un.org/departments/orem/examine/exam.htm, United Nations Competitive Recruitment Examinations Program. esa.un.org/techcoup/associate_experts.asp, United Nations Associate Experts Program. unv.org, United Nations Volunteers. un.org/departments/orem/sds/interns/index.htm, United Nations Internship Program. esa.un.org/techcoup/fellowship.asp, United Nations Fellowships. unpan1.un.org/introdocs/groups/public/documents/un/UNPN007519.pdf, Employment Opportunities for Women at the United Nations. fao.org/employment/n, Employment Vacancies of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO. erecruit.ilo.org/public/index.asp, Employment Vacancies of International Labour Organization, ILO. undp.org.bh/vacancies.html, United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, Consultants Vacancies. unjobs.org, unjobs.org, job opportunities from multiple international organizations. devnetjobs.org, devnetjobs.org, international development and environment jobs and consultancies. UN.org, United Nations. UN.org/ESA, UNDESA. UNPAN.org, UNPAN. IntGovForum.org/CMS, IGF Secretariat. UNPOG.org, UNPOG. UNPAN3.UN.org/EGOVKB #VXR6G_LVHBC, UNIGOVT. UN.org/ESA/CDO/index.html, Capacity Development Office. Facebook.com/joinUNDESA. Twitter.com/UNDESA, UN Public Administration Division on Twitter. Chapter 2. A UN Agency Guide. UN Agency Websites 1. UN.org/departments/DHL/peacekeepers. UNDP.org/content/UNDP/en/home.html, United Nations Development Programme works in nearly 170 countries helping to eradicate poverty. UNICEF.org, United Nations Children's Fund provides long-term humanitarian and development assistance to children and mothers. UNHCR.org, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees protects refugees worldwide and facilitates their return home or resettlement. WFP. WFP.org. World Food Programme aims to eradicate hunger and malnutrition. UNODC. UNODC.org, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime helps member states fight drugs, crime, and terrorism. UNFPA. UNFPA.org, United Nations Population Fund is the lead UN agency for delivering a world where every pregnancy is wanted, every birth is safe, and every young person's potential is fulfilled. UNCTAD. UNCTAD.org, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development is the United Nations body responsible for dealing with development issues, particularly international trade. UNEP. UNEP.org, the United Nations Environment Programme is the voice for the environment. UNRWA. UNRWA.org, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. UN Women. UNWomen.org/n, UN Women Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment. UNHabitat. UNHabitat.org, United Nations Human Settlements Programme, promotes socially and environmentally sustainable human settlements development and the achievement of adequate shelter for all. World Bank. WorldBank.org, focuses on poverty reduction and the improvement of living standards worldwide by providing low-interest loans, interest-free credit, and grants to developing countries. World Bank Group. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. IBRD. icsid.worldbank.org/icsid/index.jsp. International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. ICSID. worldbank.org/IDA, International Development Association. IDA. IFC.org, International Finance Corporation. IFC. MIGA.org, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. MIGA. IMF. IMF.org, International Monetary Fund. WHO. WHO.int, World Health Organization. UNESCO/n.unesco.org, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization focuses on everything from teacher training to helping improve education worldwide to protecting important historical and cultural sites around the world. ILO. ILO.org, the International Labour Organization promotes international labor rights by formulating international standards on the freedom to associate, collective bargaining, the abolition of forced labor. FAO. FAO.org, Food and Agriculture Organization leads international efforts to fight hunger. IFAD. IFAD.org, International Fund for Agricultural Development. IMO. IMO.org, International Maritime Organization Shipping Regulatory Framework, addressing safety and environmental concerns, legal matters, technical cooperation, security, and efficiency. WMO. WMO.int, World Meteorological Organization facilitates the free international exchange of meteorological data and information. WIPO.int, World Intellectual Property Organization protects intellectual property throughout the world through 23 international treaties. ICAO.int, International Civilian Aviation Organization sets international rules on air navigation, the investigation of air accidents, and aerial border crossing procedures. ITU.int, International Telecommunication Union is the United Nations specialized agency for information and communication technologies. UNIDO.org, United Nations Industrial Development Organization is the specialized agency of the United Nations that promotes industrial development for poverty reduction, inclusive globalization, and environmental sustainability. UPUUPU.int, Universal Postal Union is the primary forum for cooperation between postal sector players. UNWTO. UNWTO.org, World Tourism Organization is the United Nations agency responsible for the promotion of responsible, sustainable, and universally accessible tourism. UNOWDSUNAIDS.org/N, Joint United Nations Programme on HIV/AIDS. UNOWDS.org/EN/Targets and Commitments. UNISDR.org, United Nations Office for Disaster Reduction serves as the focal point in the United Nations system for the coordination of disaster reduction. UNOPS.org/English/pages/home.aspx, the United Nations Office for Project Services is an operational arm of the United Nations, supporting the successful implementation of its partners' peace-building, humanitarian and development projects. IAEA.org, International Atomic Energy Agency is the world's center for cooperation in the nuclear field. WTO.org, World Trade Organization is a forum for governments to negotiate trade agreements and a place where member governments try to sort out the trade problems they face with each other. CTBT.org, Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization promotes the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. OPCWPCW.org, Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons is the implementing body of the Chemical Weapons Convention, CWC. UN agency websites too. UNESCAP.org, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, ESCAP. unescap.org/stat/index.htm Statistics Division. ESCWA.org.lb, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, ESCWA. UNCA.org, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, ECA. UNCE.org/welcome.html United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, EASE. UNCE.org/stats/data.htm Statistical data on Internet. ECLAC.org United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC. UNICEF.org, United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. UNICEF.org/status, UNICEF Statistics. UNICEF-ICDC.org, UNICEF Innocenti Research Center. UNCTAD.org United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. Intracen.org, International Trade Center. UNDP.org, United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. UNDP.org/HDRO/statistics.html Human Development Report Statistics. UNDP.org/DPA/publications/index.html Publications. UNDCP.org, United Nations World Drug Control Program. UNDCP.org/research.html, research. UNFPA.org, United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA. UNFPA.org/SWP/SWP main.htm, the State of World Population. UN.org/POPIN, United Nations Population Information Network. DevelopmentGateway.org/POP, Population/Reproductive Health Portal. UN.org/Departments/UNSD, United Nations Statistics Division. UN.org/WomenWatch, Women Watch, the UN Internet Gateway on the Advancement and Empowerment of Women. UN.org/WomenWatch/resources/stats.htm, Women Watch Statistics and Indicators. UNRISD.org/index.htm, United Nations Research Institute for Social Development, UNRISD. UNRISD.org/ENGindex/publ.htm, UNRISD Publications. UN.org/peace/index.html, Peace and Security. UN.org/departments/dpko/timeline/index.html, United Nations Peacekeeping 1948-2002. UN.org/rights/index.html, Human Rights. IPCC.ch/index.html, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. ICJ-CIJ.org, International Court of Justice, ICJ. ICC-CPI.in/php/index.php, International Criminal Court, ICC. UN.org/law/ICC, Rome Statute of the World Criminal Court. UN.org/ICT, International Criminal Tribunal for the Former Yugoslavia. ICTR.org, International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR. IFAD.org, International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. IFAD.org/doc/index.htm, Online Publications. UN.org/ha/index.html, Humanitarian Affairs. UN.org/special-rep/or/LLS/default.htm, Office of the UN High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries and Small Island Developing States, ARLS. ReliefWeb.int, ReliefWeb. UNHCR.ch, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. UNHCR.ch/statist/main.htm, statistics. UNHCR.ch/refworld/welcome.htm, RefWorld, a collection of full-text databases. UNHCR.ch/refworld/maps/maps.htm, maps. UN.org/law/index.html, International Law. UNCGIN.org, United Nations Crime and Justice Information Network. UNCGIN.org/statistics/statistics.html, statistics and research sources. UNCGIN.org/documents/documents.html, UN Documents. UNESCO.org, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. unstock.unesco.org/ulis/unspib.html, UNSPIB, bibliographic records of UNESCO documents and publications and library collections. unescostat.unesco.org/uis/index.html, UNESCO Institute for Statistics. unstock.unesco.org/ulis, unistock, access to UNESCO full-text documents. UNIDO.org, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. UN Agency Websites 3. AsianDevBank.org. CAM.org/ICAO, Civil Aviation. CGIAR.org, Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research. ECLAC.org, ECLAC.cl, Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. FAO.org, Food and Agriculture. FAO.org/VA/employ.htm, jobs with food and agriculture. IADB.org, Inter-American Development Bank. IAEA.or.at, Atomic Energy Agency. IAEA.or.at/worldatom/vacancies, jobs with the Atomic Energy Agency. ibis.ib.upu.org, Universal Postal Union. ICAO.int, ca.org/ICAO, Civil Aviation Organization. ICAO.int/goto.pl ICAO/en/vacancy.htm, jobs with civil aviation. IFAD.org, Agricultural Development. IFC.org, International Finance Organization. ILO.org, International Labour. IMF.org, International Monetary Fund. IMO.org, International Maritime. International Telecommunications Union. ITU.ch, ITU.int, Telecommunications Union. itu.int.itodoc/gs/vacancy, jobs with the. MIGA.org, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. PAO.org, Pan American Health Organization. PAO.org/English/APL/APLVACAN.htm, jobs with the Pan American Health Organization. Research Institute. RIO.net/UNITA-R, training and research. UN.or.at, UN office at Vienna. UNOR.it.UNCITRAL, International Trade Law. UN.or.at/USA_kiosk/index.html, peaceful uses of outer space. UN.or.at/vacancy-announcements/index.html, jobs at the UN office at Vienna. UN.org/departmentes/dpko, peacekeeping forces. UN.org/departmentes/ESCAP, Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. UN.org/departmentes/ORM, United Nations UN. UN.org/INSTRA, Advancement of Women. UN.org/peace, peacekeeping forces. UNOWDS.org, AIDS/HIV. UNCITRAL.org, International Trade Law. UNCTAD.org, Trade and Development. UNDCP.org, Drug Control. UNDCP.org/vacancy/index.htm, jobs with the Drug Control Program. UNDCP.org/vacancy/index.htm, United Nations International Drug Control Program UNDP. UNDP.org, Development Program. UNDP.org/UN/habitat, Human Settlements/Habitat. UNCE.org, Economic Commission for Europe. UNEP.org, Environment Program. UNESCAP.org, Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. UNESCO.org, Education, Science and Culture. UNESCO.org/general/eng/about/recruit.html, jobs. UNESCO.org/general/eng/about/recruit.html, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, France. UNFCCC.int, Framework Climate Change Convention. UNFPA.org, Fund for Population Activities. UNFPA.org/about/employment.htm, jobs with the unfined for population activities. Unhabitat.org, Human Settlements Program. UNHCHR.ch, Human Rights. UNHCR.ch, Commission for Refugees. UNICE.org/UNIRSD, Social Development. UNICC.org/IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development. UNICC.org/IFAD/VAC395N.html, jobs with the International Fund for Agricultural Development. UNICC.org/ITC, International Trade Center. UNICC.org/UNCTAD, Trade and Development. UNICEF.org, Children's Emergency Fund. UNICRI.it, Interregional Crime and Justice. UNIDIR.org, Disarmament Research. UNIDO.org, Industrial Development. UNIDO.org/start/services/vacancies/navigator.htmls, jobs with the Industrial Development Organization. UNIFEM.UNDP.org, Development Fund for Women. UN-INSTRAW.org, International Research and Training Institute for the Advancement of Women. UNITAR.org, Institute for Training and Research. UNODC.org, Office on Drugs and Crime. UNOPS.org, Project Services. UNOPS.org, United Nations Office of Projects and Services. UNRISD.org, Research Institute for Social Development. UNRWA.org, Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East. UNSCC.org, System Staff College. UNU.edu UN University. UNV.ch/vacancies, United Nations Volunteers, Switzerland. UNV.org/unvols/index.htm, 800-424-8580, UNvolunteers. UPU.int, Universal Postal Union. WFP.org, Food Program. WFP.org/vacancies/index.html, jobs with the World Food Program. WHO.ch, WHO.int, World Health Organization. WHO.int/per.vacancies/index.htm, jobs with the World Health Organization. WIPO.int, WIPO.org, World Intellectual Property Organization. WIPO.int/eng/vacancies/index.htm, jobs with World Intellectual Property. With UNESCO. WMO.ch, Meteorology. Worldbank.org. WORLD-TOURISM.org. WTO.org, World Trade. UN Agency websites for International Labour Organization. 300 East 44th St. NYC 10017 to 4403. 212-697-0150. ILO.org. United Nations Development Programme. 1 UN. Plaza. NYC 10017. 212-906-5597. UNDP.org. Permanent jobs worldwide and summer jobs for students. UN. Development Fund for Women. 304 East 45th St. 6th FL. NYC 10017. 212-906-6456. Unifem.undp.org. UN. Industrial Development Organization. 1 UN Plaza. Number BC 1-11110. NYC 10017 to 3575. 212-963-6882. UNIDO.org. UN. Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. 2 UN Plaza. Number 900. NYC 10017. 212-963-5995. UNESCO.org. United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. 866 UN. Plaza. NYC 10017. 212-326-7000. UNICEF.org. UNICEFUSA.org. Jobs working with poor kids. UN. International School. 24 to 50 E River Drive. NYC 10010. School for Children of UN Employees. World Association of Former United Nations Interns and Fellows. 2 UN. Plaza. POB 3241, GCS. NYC 10163. Information about internships at the United Nations. Chapter 3. United Nations offices in most countries. Find the United Nations office in every country. United Nations Permanent Missions Worldwide email addresses. unog.ch/bluebook. UN.org. United Nations Permanent Missions Worldwide email addresses. Afghanistan at un.int. Permanent Mission of Afghanistan. Albania at un.int. Permanent Mission of Albania. Algeria at un.int. Permanent Mission of Algeria. Andorra at un.int. Permanent Mission of Andorra. Agaun at und.org. Permanent Mission of Angola. Antigua at un.int. Permanent Mission of Antigua and Barbuda. Argentina at un.int. Permanent Mission of Argentina. Armenia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Armenia. Australia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Australia. Austria at un.int. Permanent Mission of Austria. Azerbaijan at un.int. Permanent Mission of Azerbaijan. Bisun at undp.org. Permanent Mission of the Bahamas. Bahrain at un.int. Permanent Mission of Bahrain. Bangladesh at un.int. Permanent Mission of Bangladesh. Barbados at un.int. Permanent Mission of Barbados. Belarus at un.int. Permanent Mission of Belarus. Belgium at un.int. Permanent Mission of Belgium. Belize at un.int. Permanent Mission of Belize. Benin at un.int. Permanent Mission of Benin. Bhutan at un.int. Permanent Mission of Bhutan. Bolivia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Bolivia. Bosnia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Botswana at un.int. Permanent Mission of Botswana. Bron at delbrazonu.org. Permanent Mission of Brazil. Darussalam at und.org. Permanent Mission of Brunei. Bulgaria at un.int. Permanent Mission of Bulgaria. Burkina Faso at un.int. Permanent Mission of Burkina Faso. Burundi at un.int. Permanent Mission of Burundi. Cambodia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Cambodia. CMRUN at undp.org. Permanent Mission of Cameroon. Canada at un.int. Permanent Mission of Canada. CPVUN at undp.org. Permanent Mission of Cape Verde. CAF at un.int. Permanent Mission of the Central African Republic. Chad at un.int. Permanent Mission of Chad. Chile at un.int. Permanent Mission of Chile. CHNUN at undp.org. Permanent Mission of China. Colombia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Colombia. Common at undp.org. Permanent Mission of Comoros. Congo at un.int. Permanent Mission of Congo. Costa Rica at un.int. Permanent Mission of Costa Rica. Ivory Coast at un.int. Permanent Mission of Côte d'Ivoire. Croatia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Croatia. Cuba at un.int. Permanent Mission of Cuba. Cyprus at un.int. Permanent Mission of Cyprus. Czech Republic at un.int. Permanent Mission of the Czech. DR Congo at un.int. Permanent Mission of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Denmark at un.int. Permanent Mission of Denmark. Djibouti at nic.net. Permanent Mission of Djibouti. Dominica at un.int. Permanent Mission of Dominica. DR at un.int. Permanent Mission of the Dominican Republic. Ecuador at un.int. Permanent Mission of Ecuador. Egypt at un.int. Permanent Mission of Egypt. El Salvador at un.int. Permanent Mission of El Salvador. Guinea at un.int. Permanent Mission of Equatorial. Eritrea at un.int. Permanent Mission of Eritrea. Estonia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Estonia. Ethiopia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Ethiopia. Fiji at un.int. Permanent Mission of Fiji. Finland at un.int. Permanent Mission of Finland. France at un.int. Permanent Mission of France. Gabon at un.int. Permanent Mission of Gabon. Gambia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Gambia. Georgia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Georgia. Germany at un.int. Permanent mission of Germany. Ghana at un.int. Permanent mission of Ghana. Greece at un.int. Permanent mission of Greece. Grenada at un.int. Permanent mission of Grenada. Guatemala at un.int. Permanent mission of Guatemala. Guinea at un.int. Permanent mission of Guinea. Guinea-Bissau at un.int. Permanent mission of Guinea-Bissau. Guyana at un.int. Permanent mission of Guyana. Haiti at un.int. Permanent mission of Haiti. Honduras at un.int. Permanent mission of Honduras. Hungary at un.int. Permanent mission of Hungary. Islun at undp.org. Permanent mission of Iceland. India at un.int. Permanent mission of India. Indonesia at un.int. Permanent mission of Indonesia. Iraq at un.int. Permanent mission of Iraq. Ireland at un.int. Permanent mission of Ireland. Israel.un at israelfm.org. Permanent mission of Israel. Italy at un.int. Permanent mission of Italy. Jamaica at un.int. Permanent mission of Jamaica. Japan at un.int. Permanent mission of Japan. Jordan at un.int. Permanent mission of Jordan. Kazakhstan at un.int. Permanent mission of Kazakhstan. Kenya at un.int. Permanent mission of Kenya. DPRK at un.int. Permanent mission of the Dem. People's Republic of Korea. Korea at un.int. Permanent mission of their Republic of Korea. Kuwait at un.int. Permanent mission of Kuwait. Kyrgyzstan at un.int. Permanent mission of Kyrgyzstan. Laos at un.int. Permanent mission of Lao P. Democrat Republic. Elvan at undp.org. Permanent mission of Latvia. Lebanon at un.int. Permanent mission of Lebanon. Lesotho at un.int. Permanent mission of Lesotho. Liberia at un.int. Permanent mission of Liberia. Libya at un.int. Permanent mission of Libya. Liechtenstein at un.int. Permanent mission of Liechtenstein. Lithuania at un.int. Permanent mission of Lithuania. Luxembourg at un.int. Permanent mission of Luxembourg. Macedonia at un.int. Permanent mission of the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Madagascar at un.int. Permanent mission of Madagascar. Malawi at un.int. Permanent mission of Malawi. Malaysia at un.int. Permanent mission of Malaysia. Maldives at un.int. Permanent mission of Maldives. Mali at un.int. Permanent mission of Mali. Malta at un.int. Permanent mission of Malta. Marshall Islands at un.int. Permanent mission of Marshall Islands. Mauritania at un.int. Permanent mission of Mauritania. Mauritius at un.int. Permanent mission of Mauritius. Mexico at un.int. Permanent mission of Mexico. Micronesia at un.int. Permanent mission of the Federated States of Micronesia. Moldova at un.int. Permanent mission of Moldova. Monaco at un.int. Permanent mission of Monaco. Mongolia at un.int. Permanent mission of Mongolia. Morocco at un.int. Permanent mission of Morocco. Mozambique at un.int. Permanent mission of Mozambique. Myanmar at un.int. Permanent mission of Myanmar. Namibia at un.int. Permanent mission of Namibia. Nepal at un.int. Permanent mission of Nepal. Netherlands at un.int. Permanent mission of Netherlands. New Zealand at un.int. Permanent mission of New Zealand. Nicaragua at un.int. Permanent mission of Nicaragua. Niger at un.int. Permanent mission of Niger. Nigeria at un.int. Permanent mission of Nigeria. Norway at un.int. Permanent mission of Norway. Oman at un.int. Permanent mission of Oman. Pakistan at un.int. Permanent mission of Pakistan. Palau et un.int. Permanent Mission of Palau. Panama et un.int. Permanent Mission of Panama. PNG et un.int. Permanent Mission of Papua New Guinea. Paraguay et un.int. Permanent Mission of Paraguay. Peru et un.int. Permanent Mission of Peru. Philippines et un.int. Permanent Mission of the Philippines. Poland et un.int. Permanent Mission of Poland. Portugal et un.int. Permanent Mission of Portugal. Qatar et un.int. Permanent Mission of Qatar. Romania et un.int. Permanent Mission of Romania. Rwanda et un.int. Permanent Mission of Rwanda. Rusuan et un.int. Permanent Mission of the Russian Federation. Samoa et un.int. Permanent Mission of Samoa. San Marino et un.int. Permanent Mission of San Marino. STP et un.int. Permanent Mission of Sao Tome and Principe. Saudi Arabia et un.int. Permanent Mission of Saudi Arabia. Senegal et un.int. Permanent Mission of Senegal. Seychelles et un.int. Permanent Mission of Seychelles. Sierra Leone et un.int. Permanent Mission of Sierra Leone. Singapore et un.int. Permanent Mission of Singapore. Slovakia et un.int. Permanent Mission of Slovakia. Slovenia et un.int. Permanent Mission of Slovenia. Solomon Islands et un.int. Permanent Mission of Solomon Islands. Somalia et un.int. Permanent Mission of Somalia. South Africa et un.int. Permanent Mission of South Africa. Spain et un.int. Permanent Mission of Spain. Sri Lanka et un.int. Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka. SDKN et un.int. Permanent Mission of Saint Kitts and Nevis. St. Lucia et un.int. Permanent Mission of Saint Lucia. SDVG et un.int. Permanent Mission of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. Sudan et un.int. Permanent Mission of Sudan. Suriname et un.int. Permanent Mission of Suriname. Swaziland et un.int. Permanent Mission of Swaziland. Sweden et un.int. Permanent Mission of Sweden. Syria et un.int. Permanent Mission of the Syrian Arab Republic. Tajikistan et un.int. Permanent Mission of Tajikistan. Thailand et un.in. Permanent Mission of Thailand. Togo et un.int. Permanent Mission of Togo. TTO et un.int. Permanent Mission of Trinidad and Tobago. Tunisia et un.int. Permanent Mission of Tunisia. Turkey et un.int. Permanent Mission of Turkey. Turkmenistan et un.int. Permanent Mission of Turkmenistan. Uganda et un.int. Permanent Mission of Uganda. Ukraine et un.int. Permanent Mission of Ukraine. UAE et un.int. Permanent Mission of United Arab Emirates. Tanzania et un.int. Permanent Mission of the United Republic of Tanzania. UK et un.int. Permanent Mission of the United Kingdom. USA et un.int. Permanent Mission of the United States of America. Uruguay et un.int. Permanent Mission of Uruguay. Uzbekistan et un.int. Permanent Mission of Uzbekistan. VUTUN at UNDP.org. Permanent Mission of Vanuatu. Venezuela at un.int. Permanent Mission of Venezuela. Vietnam at un.int. Permanent Mission of Vietnam. Yemen at un.int. Permanent Mission of Yemen. Yugoslavia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Yugoslavia. Zambia at un.int. Permanent Mission of Zambia. Zimbabwe at un.int. Permanent Mission of Zimbabwe. Franco-Pihani at un.int. Permanent Observer Mission of Francophonie. Red Cross at un.int. Permanent Observer Mission of International Federation of Red Cross. VATUN at UNDP.org. Permanent Observer Mission of Holy See. Switzerland at un.int. Permanent Observer Mission off Switzerland.